Alright, is it ready?
Yep.
Okay, the little girl and the daisies. There once was a little girl who loved to sit by the window at night and look up at the bright stars, how they twinkled happily in the sky. What a pity the stars are so far away. Then one beautiful starry night, the girl made a wish. Oh heaven, make the stars turn into flowers so I can play with them. The star heard the little girl's wish and that night began to reflect on the dewdrops. The next morning the girl woke up. She was amazed at the lovely flowers that brightened the garden. The flowers were white and beautiful and the little girl played with them the whole day. The girl's name was Daisy, a name that was passing time corrupted to Daisy. The sun asked, "Are you happy? Do you have a special wish?" "We are happy," replied the daisies, "but we would like to bloom every year so that we can bring joy to the children." So it shall be. Since that day, white or pale pink daisies brighten the beds of our gardens in spring and have become the target of children's love game. He loves me not. He loves me not, while picking petals off a daisy. The end. Yay!
The Little Match Girl. A girl walked on a cold night, barefoot and freezing. She carried a box of matches in her apron. She settled in a corner between two houses for the night. She remembered that she had matches and lit one for a moment of warmth. The flame went out almost as quickly as she lit it. She lit another match and she could see things through the wall. She saw a nice table with food and a warm fire. When the match went out, the wall went back to normal. She lit another match and found herself under a Christmas tree. The girl lit another match and saw her past grandmother. She wished that she could be with her and imagined being with her again. Oh gosh. As strangers passed, they took pity on the girl who had frozen to death, and nobody had helped her. But she was happy with her grandmother at last. Fin.
The story of I Soon Bushi. Long, long ago, there lived a sweet old couple, having no children, but desiring one very much. They went to the shrine and prayed, "Please, please let us have a child, no matter how small." The mother was so sad. All she wanted was a baby boy. They wished and prayed, and eventually the gods sent a son to them. But small indeed was the child, no longer than a grown man's fingertip. The couple raised the child tenderly, and though he became a bright and well-respected young man, he grew not at all. As a result, he became known as Aisun Bushi, which means 3 centimeters in Japanese. One day, Aisun Bushi told his parents that he wanted to seek his fortune in the city. His parents were worried about their son, but trusting him, they sent him off with a sword made of a sewing needle and a boat made from a rice bowl. Aisun Bushi walked along until he came upon the river that flowed towards the town. There he set his rice bowl in the water and paddled with the chopstick for days on end, until at last he reached the town. Aisun Bushi walked about town until he found himself in front of the stately mansion of the Lord. At the gate he announced, "I have come to the city to work and train. I beg for you to make me a servant." But he was so tiny that the guard did not notice him. I'm here, Aisun Bushi shouted. Finally the guard spotted him and lifted him up from the shadow of the gate. Aisun Bushi was granted permission to see the Lord, and in the palm of the Lord's hand he knelt, bowed, and pledged his loyalty. The Lord took an instant liking to Aisun Bushi and made him a retainer. Everyone in the mansion soon came to like the intelligent, charming Aisun Bushi, but none more so than the Lord's daughter. Before long he became her personal attendant. One afternoon, the princess took Aisun Bushi along and went away to pay her respects at the temple. Along the way, 2 ogres jumped out and onto the road and blocked their path. Aisun Bushi unsheathed his sword, which was a little sewing needle, and instantly threw himself upon their attackers. But then suddenly, one of the ogres swallowed him up in one gulp. The ogre was so overcome, he stabbed at the inside of his stomach with his sewing needle. The ogre was so overcome with pain that it threw Aisun Bushi out of his stomach. Aisun Bushi immediately jumped on the floor. The other ogre's eyebrows stabbed at its eye. Defeated, the ogres flew away crying, and in the process one of them dropped its magic hammer. The princess was so impressed with his heroic work that she wanted to marry him, and they lived happily ever after.
Long ago, there was a lonely crane. She lost her family due to war, so she tried to find a new place to live. Throughout her travels, she traveled through the sky all night, looking for some place to call home. Throughout her travels, she found a new place. Throughout her travels, she found a new place to live. It reminded her of her old home. She loved it so very much, but she still felt like something was missing. So then, while she was sitting and eating, she saw the most handsomest crane she had ever seen before. And then, they both fell in love. The end.
Peter Pan. Peter is a little boy who decided to never grow up. He lives in a faraway Neverland, full of adventures and fun. The children loved to hear stories about him, and Peter himself would come flying down and sit on the nursery window to hear all the stories. Peter Pan and Tinkerbell live in Neverland. They go to Wendy Darling's home to bring her and her brothers to Neverland, the place you never grow up. Came to their windowsill with Tinkerbell and put some pixie dust on them so they could fly. So they were flying over the town. Sorry, this is on my phone. He asked them to come to Neverland with him, and they came with the pixie dust. And here's Neverland with the mermaids and the fairies. Peter Pan's house was in a tree under the ground, and he brought them to it. He told them stories at the house, and there were many things to do here. Sometimes they played war with the Red Indians, who were their good friends. Sometimes they had trouble with the wicked pirates, who were their enemies. And here's him fighting them off because he took Wendy and her brothers on their ship, and Peter Pan fought them off. And then they stole his boat, and then they decided they wanted to go back home, so they had pixie dust, and they went back home. The end.
The Tortoise and the Hare by Michael and Lorenzo. It started on a warm summer day with wind in the breeze. The hare was gloating and boasting about how he was the fastest of the townspeople. I'm the hare, I'm the fastest around, fastest to wherever we, past, present, and future. The tortoise saw his rambunctious behavior and approached the crowd. The hare noticing the tortoise in the crowd obnoxiously acknowledges the tortoise's speed. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the greatest god and never child on a treadmill. The crowd laughs at the advancement of the tortoise. The tortoise paying no attention to the hare's remarks. Hey, you don't see me talking to you, slowpoke? The tortoise keeps ignoring the hare. The hare, frustrated by the blatant disrespect, challenges the tortoise to a race. Race me, punk, and I'll bet my entire life savings on it. The tortoise looks up at the hare to acknowledge his idiocracy and responds with only 2 words. Let's go. The two are racing through the forest, which is smooth through the trees, a sharp left, and then the finish line. The crowd is electric and the contestants are ready. The buzzer sounds and the hare jumps out to the lead. Amazing leap. He goes through the trees, hits a sharp left, but before he hits the finish line, he suddenly gets tired and egotistically takes a nap. When he awoke, he seen the tortoise with the crowd, chanting, "Tortoise, tortoise, tortoise, tortoise." The tortoise won the race and humbly approached the hare and told him to keep his life savings and to check his ego while he's still in his quest for greatness.
No Gus by Caitlin and Maya. There once was a cat named Gus. He was a very young cat, so he had trouble following the rules. One night, Gus's owner was asleep, and Gus started running around the room. His owner shouted, "No, Gus." Gus looked at her and said, "Girl, please," and jumped on her desk. After a moment of silence, there was a very loud bang. Gus had dropped the desk mirror. His owner sat up and threw a sock at his head. Gus settled down and slowly fell asleep. A few moments later, Gus's owner's phone started ringing. She then gets dressed in a hurry and leaves. When Gus wakes up, he notices his owner was gone. Meow, meow. Time to start some shit. He starts running wildly throughout the room. He makes his way to the TV. Gus starts to play with the TV cord when his owner walks in. "No, Gus," she shouts. Gus continues anyway. "No, Gus," she screeches as he starts to rub his head on the TV. "Gus, don't you dare." Gus takes his paw and knocks the TV down. Gus's owner couldn't believe He knocked the TV down. Gus's owner yells, Gus! The end.
Yeah. Bear with me. Our story begins with Brutus and Craig. Brutus and Craig were always huge fans of the outdoors. And after finally getting some free time, they decided to go for a little hiking/camping trip. Craig is very nervous. This is their first trip alone, and maybe it's finally time to let things off his chest. Brutus loaded the car, and they spent their 2-hour drive listening to music and singing along. Upon their arrival, they noticed they had the campsite to themselves. Woo! At least we can blast our music as loud as we want. Brutus set up the tent, while Craig set out for firewood. On Craig's mini journey, he had practiced what he was going to say to Brutus. After getting wood, Craig headed back to base camp to find a fully set up tent. Wow, great job! Thank you! Craig places the wood aside and they both get prepared for their hike. They started around noon, which meant they would see the sunset at the perfect time. Climbing, 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 they are climbing. Brutus and Craig found a nice flat spot to post up for lunch. This nice spot might not have been the best choice because someone or something hungry was lurking about. Brutus noticed a subtle rustling in the distance, so he told Craig to get closer. All of a sudden, they were confronted with a black bear. Brutus informed Craig to stay still and be quiet, but Craig decided in his potential final moments he would tell Brutus his true feelings. Brutus told Craig to head back down to base camp and that he would take care of the bear. Craig followed orders but was very worried the entire walk back. 1 hour later, back at base camp. Craig is sitting by the fire when he hears loud rustling as if someone or something was running down the hiking trail. In Craig's favor, it was Brutus, with only a few cuts and bruises. Brutus, I can't believe you made it, Craig stands up and says. Listen, I like you. I've always liked you. It's always been you. Brutus smiles and goes to hug him. Maybe in another lifetime.
We stop on the next scene.